What's up, everybody? We're back again for another Beyond the Ballot. Today's episode, Jeremy Harding asked me to host a debate between him and the unironic ANCAP. The subject of the debate was, can you be racist and be a libertarian? You all know my stance on that. Fuck no. But apparently unironic ANCAP thought differently. So check out the debate. Leave in the comments who you thought won and what idea won, more importantly. Let us know. And of course, you can find Jeremy at Insanity is Free on Twitter. He's been talking with unironic ANCAP and other people about the debate since it went down. You should be seeing this on Monday, so yesterday on Sunday. Yeah, enjoy. Make sure to comment and tell us what you think, how the debate went, and, like, comment, subscribe everywhere you can find Beyond the Ballot as usual. And before we jump into it real quick, got to thank my Patreon super supporters, Chuck, Dave, Maxwell, and Dennis. Y'all make the show happen. I really appreciate it. Also, Chuck, Dave, and Dennis are producers of Beyond the Ballot, which I really appreciate as well. So y'all enjoy the show. Beyond the Ballot is officially sponsored by Project Sparta. Now's the time to get healthy and in shape. Greg Papanicholas is going to get you there with personalized meal plans, training, group support, and tons of amazing fitness and motivational resources and knowledge, including the Project Sparta Facebook group. You can go to projectspartacoaching.com and learn more about Greg's work and get started on your path to health. In this crazy world we're living in, our health is more important than ever. Get up, start learning, communicating, and training. One of the most important and often neglected things in life is your physical health. Get to projectspartacoaching.com now and get after it. Shout out to Voluntary Apothecary. Voluntary Apothecary is here to fulfill all of your beard care needs. They carry beard oil, mustache wax, beard butter, and more. I only use their beard care products, and I love them. You can check out their amazing products at voluntарyapothecary.com, and listeners of the show can take 10% off your order with code BEYOND at checkout.
Professional anarchists.
You're getting paid?
All right, we're back with another episode of Beyond the Ballot. Today I'm moderating a debate between Jeremiah Harding and the unironic ANCAP. Can you be a racist and a libertarian? That's the topic. We're going to jump right in. So the first word is going to unironic ANCAP for his opening statement, and Jeremy will follow. Whenever you begin, unironic ANCAP, start the timer for 5 minutes. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, so my argument's pretty cut and dry. Libertarianism boils down to the opposition of use of force and coercion against other individuals. I'm not a racist. I'm not going to sit here and try to justify racism. I don't think it's worth an investment into discussing because it's ridiculous. But the idea that you cannot just dislike someone because of their race and nice smiles there. I like that. If you can't not be a libertarian while not using force, why? That's it.
Okay.
Damn.
All right. If that's it, we'll pass it over to Jeremy for your opening statement.
Oh, this is going to be fun. All right. Throughout the history of political discourse, it has been a struggle between individual liberty and authority, underpinned by the question of what it means to be human and how best to be human. This has led to a plethora of supremacist ideologies, always bolstered by some kind of state. Whether it's believed they are supreme based on some sort of dialectical advantage or based on race, sex, it's always been preceded and followed by tyranny of one sort or another. This is because what lies at the ugly heart of racism is the idea that humans do not control their own destiny. Humans have no free will and are slaves to the genetic they were born with. No personal achievement is possible beyond that which your genes allow, And because of this, societies should be relegated to a caste system whereby certain land, resources, and more are only available to a person of a certain alleged racial phenotype. Besides the obvious problems with this, in that humanity has engaged in so much miscegenation that nobody is 100% pure, and that purity is a myth anyway, given the wild evolutionary advantages inherent in miscegenation, it also argumentatively rejects the idea of liberty itself, which requires free will to even be possible. If we have no control over our merits due to race, then there is no meritocracy. Your value in society will be determined by the results in a genetic lottery, and you cannot rise above that. If this is not the case, then it summarily defeats the racist argument itself. Contending with this obvious truth is what leads to the power dynamic inherent in racist societies and the worm-like subcultures which attempt to create them. Or should I say, the worm-like stolen cultures, because for people who believe their race to be superior, a lot of racists seem to require theft from other cultures in terms of iconography and symbolism. But that aside, it should be no surprise that people who believe they are superior based on genes and that there is no hope for betterness for a certain group of people would forgo the concept of liberty entirely in order to cement this paradigm on a political level. This is what led to many dictatorships, which resulted in untold suffering for the masses and minorities. It's also why the idea of a libertarian racist is so laughable. It's as though they are naive enough to believe that they can start from the same premises and get to different conclusions, but never enough to actually pursue that conclusion for want of being called statist. A few of these alleged libertarian racists have even tried to make it seem as though they have approaches to liberty, decentralized ones. But they usually resort to monarchy and fascism instead, in open arguments. This is because they still believe themselves to be supreme. And if they're supreme, they may as well force their will on the people. It's the same conclusion every time. Ron Paul called racism an ugly form of collectivism. He was right. Many other libertarian thinkers have also opposed racism on similar grounds, and they were right too. From the original leftist libertarian thinkers who opposed hierarchy to begin with, to the right libertarians that sprung from French classical liberal tradition and American independence tradition, they've all understood that this sort of inherent tribalism only leads to conflict and aggression. But even if it doesn't get there, the ideas are fully incompatible with libertarianism, as any cursory observer of racist tradition would tell you. So let's be very clear and very specific. You can't be a libertarian racist. The idea that you can spit in the face of everything liberty is supposed to stand for. You're supposed to be able to, as an individual, stand on your own. But if you're responsible for the sins of the father and fathers that weren't even yours, there is no place in the world that you can hide from your genetics. If you're not, then racism itself is a flawed concept. Either way, it's not fit to exist alongside the idea of individual liberty and personal responsibility, free will and choice, and the desire to break the chains of all who walk the earth. Any other idea is asinine, and I look forward to laughing at this trash as they'll attempt to justify what has only ever justified tyranny. You are not supreme because of your race, and if this statement strikes you as controversial, or if you disagree with it, then you don't believe in free will and have no business calling yourself a libertarian. Least of all, forming some society based around this idea and excluding people based on the color of their skin. A flawed metric to begin with, given the fact that genetic code and physical presentation can vary, and even judging people based on skin color and other physical attributes is a doomed way to achieve some sort of alleged racial superiority. The truth is, we're all human, and until we stop the attempts at superiority, there will always be a state ever encroaching upon our liberty, and we will never, ever be free. Racism stands in opposition to liberty, not alongside it.
All right. Almost full time. Very good. All right. So back to the unironic ANCAP for the first question. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll have you unmute. All righty.
Go right ahead.
How does or would racism promote or grow freedom and libertarianism?
So, in my mind, and I spoke to this with quite a few individuals, and they seem to come to an agreement. Part of libertarianism is your ability to have the freedom to associate or disassociate with whoever you want for whatever reason. Again, so long as you're not using force or coercion, or violating the basic non-aggression principle. when it comes to your right to associate, whether that be people on your property, people that you do business with, you provide goods and services to, that falls to your ability to choose for whatever reason. And again, so long as you are not using force or coercion to, implement the ideas that you have, I believe fundamentally that you are okay to disassociate with someone based off of a racial basis or not do business with them. That is your right as an individual. I don't see it, like I said, no force coercion. You're not violating anyone else's rights. You're just choosing not to associate with them. It's not that difficult of a discussion. It's not that difficult of an argument. This is being made out, and I'm getting these subtle tones that he's asserting that I'm a racist. I've said on several occasions that I'm not. I can see that's the direction this is going, but yeah, that's it. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's cut and dry. There's not much digging to do to it. If you're not infringing on people's rights, if you're not enforcing these things onto people, you're fine.
All right, thank you. All right, Jeremy, you're going to have 5 minutes to respond to the question that the unironic ANCAP just answered that question. Question being, how does or would racism promote or grow freedom?
It doesn't. So beyond that cut and dried bullshit, first off, I didn't ad hominem you once. What I did do is I did say that if you believe yourself to be superior, you can't be a libertarian, because libertarians don't believe themselves superior based on race. They believe themselves superior based on the choices they made with their liberty. And ultimately, when you say that people can't be as good as you because of their race, if you say that you don't want to associate with somebody because of their race, because you believe that they're in some way inferior, this is not liberty. It's not free will. It's ultimately boils down to you attempting to hijack the principles that would act in defense of liberty, in defense of people who would not defend the liberty of all. Ultimately, when we deal with racism, which I wasn't calling you one. If I did, I would have said you. Ironic, and never once said that. What I did say is, if you believe these things, you kind of can't be libertarian. But just to be very specific, when we're dealing with racists and racism, that's the reason that all these things have always resulted in violence. Because when you can't get your way, your irrational bullshit way of only having a certain kind of person in your society, that kind of eventually fails, because people realize that, hey, maybe your rules in general, not the least of which is this one, aren't rules that I want to abide by. And that's how you get liberal movements. That's how you get radical movements toward like egalitarianism. That's how you get like the essential movements of liberty, is the idea that social rules should not benefit the few, but they should benefit all, if they exist at all. And in terms of anarchy, which anarcho-capitalism is allegedly a variety of, that includes the ability to choose, hey, I was born with, whatever genetic condition, but I will rise above that, and I will become a better person by way of meritocracy. I will become a better person than some white people, than some black people, than some Asians, than some Mexicans, than some anything I want to be, I can be better than, right? That's what liberty is all about. Liberty is about the freedom to choose your destiny. Racism is the opposite of that. You can't choose your destiny. You're fucked. As soon as you have this skin color or these genetic phenotypical presentations, which don't always even match your genetic heritage, by the way, don't match the majority, like somebody who has a fraction of a race in their DNA can have that race present because of the genetic lottery, because we're all the result of a great cosmic accident. We're all the result of that one sperm that made it in, beating out thousands of others and all the masturbation attempts. We're not fucking unique in that sort of way. We are the same kind of person as the person next door, with very few exceptions. And those exceptions are not delineated based on race, but based on certain, inborn psychological tendencies. Psychopathy is slightly more likely in certain brains. But like the idea that we're supposed to acknowledge these people as libertarians when they won't even acknowledge that these people have liberty is so fucking asinine. The idea that we're supposed to say that they're fine as though that's an argument for liberty, which is bullshit, by the way, and a cop-out, is also asinine, because fine isn't liberty. You're not libertarian just because you're fine, whatever that means. You're not fine because you're libertarian, whatever that means. The two things aren't each other. And to essentially say that the only thing you have to be is fine to be a libertarian ignores the wealth of libertarian tradition. All libertarian arguments are the root of liberty itself. We're not talking about whether a libertarian has a right to infringe upon that person's free association. We're talking about whether or not that person who says, I won't associate with those people because they're black, is a libertarian. That's what we're arguing about. And they're not libertarians. They don't support liberty. They don't support free will. They aren't libertarians.
Thank you very much. All right. So moving on to the next question. This one's going to go to Jeremy, and it's pretty topical because unironic ANCAP, you brought up disassociation in your last answer. So maybe we'll be able to expand on that a bit with this next question for Jeremy. What is the difference between racism and discrimination, and does discrimination have a place in liberty?
Discrimination is a broader word than racism. Racism is specifically racial discrimination. It talks about inborn traits and the things that people can't control. So ultimately, when we're talking about racism, sexism, transsexism, homophobia, et cetera, blah, blah. I'm not going to fucking list them all off. I'm not that 300 genders chart. But what I am going to say is, ultimately, discrimination based on inborn traits is always going to be antithetical to liberty. However, if, for instance, I discriminate against you because you're not you, of course. Nobody here, because I have to use kid gloves with unironic ANCAP apparently and say that I'm not speaking about him specifically. But if an amorphous person, an amorphous gray blob otherkin, decides that they're going to be a pedophile and harm little children, and I say you don't get to come to my store or my bank or et cetera, that's also discrimination, and it's 100% libertarian, because they've violated the non-aggression principle. So I'm well within discrimination, supporting the non-aggression principle to ban them from my store. People don't violate the non-aggression principle by being born. People aren't a threat to liberty by being born. That isn't how liberty works. That isn't how threats to liberty work, or tyranny, or anything else. And the idea that people can be a specific kind of discriminator and be libertarian is what's under discussion, not discrimination entirely. Discrimination is what we do when we decide whether or not we want eggs or pancakes for breakfast. Discrimination itself is just making a choice. It's when that discrimination affects people on a level that they can't control, and affects people toward the goal of statism, that it truly becomes insidious. And that's always what it becomes. It's never just, I'm going to stay in my nice little allegedly libertarian non-aggression principle, but only white people are allowed commune. It's never just that. It always results in a mass statist paradigm and a huge amount of unjust hierarchy, to the point where people are cleansed, meaning mass murdered. People are tortured. People are set aside in social terms. If you do that to people because of something that they can't control, and you deny their humanity and their meritocracy at the same time, you're not a libertarian. I'm not sorry.
Very good. All right. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Unironic and Cap, to answer and or respond to the question that Jeremy just answered, and that is, what is the difference between racism and discrimination, and does discrimination have a place in liberty? Feel free to answer or respond.
So I'd like to start by saying that most of the terrible things that he said will inevitably happen, all require force, which I've made it, pretty clear that, it's kind of against the core beliefs of libertarianism. When it comes to, the difference between racism and discrimination, like Jeremiah said, I agree with him. Discrimination is a broader term, which racism is a form of discrimination based off of race. Uh, you know, Again, I hate to sound like a fucking repeating parrot, but as long as there is no, force of coercion, I don't believe that you are outside of the principles of libertarianism. It's going to be very disincentivized by market. You're not going to go do business with someone that doesn't like black people or doesn't like Asian people. Or I'm glad he's going to laugh at this. There's not much depth to my argument. That's it. You're not harming other people by just disassociating with them. That's it. You're not going to sit there unless you're advocating for them to have lesser rights than you. Then of course you're using some form of coercion there, but it's not a deep argument. I don't know why this is being dug into so deep. That's it. That's all I've got. I mean,
Sure. All right.
Can I get a reply from him?
Yeah, we can do that. We can jump in. If you'd like to reply, Jeremy, go for it.
That's, again, laughable. It's not only about not using coercion, which, by the way, you want to be specific. Coercion can be used defensively. We're talking aggression here.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it's not about just not using aggression. It's about not having a mindset that conflicts with liberty and calling yourself a libertarian. We're talking about whether somebody can be a libertarian and a racist. We're not talking about whether somebody can exist as a racist in a libertarian society. That's an entirely different question. And if your argument entirely is that these people would be frozen out of a libertarian society because of their racism, first off, that says a little bit more about the racists than the libertarians. And second off, when it comes down to it, we're talking about like a fundamental flaw in that argument, because we're like, oh, you wouldn't deal with somebody if they were not dealing with people because they're black. That's not how this would work. There would be white enclaves. There would be Hispanic enclaves. It would be like a prison, only like mass scale, because in prison, you got your little sections for each gang, and you got to join one of those gangs. And if you don't join one of those gangs, you got to get religion so that you don't have to join those gangs. It'd be like that kind of bullshit. Only everywhere, if we allow racism to infest our society, it'll be, oh yeah, we're no longer the woods. We're no longer the woods. We're the McWoods now. That'd be fucking amazing. I think that society sounds great. Sign me up. I said completely sarcastically.
Satisfied with
I want
the
to
response?
ask you a question, Jeremiah. Do you believe there are that many like racist individuals in the world?
Yes. What?
Okay. I'm just asking a question.
Okay. Then my answer is yes.
You guys got a minute to go back and forth on this one if you like, or we'll move to the next question.
Go ahead and go to the next question. I mean, unless he has anything.
I'm a hedgehog. I'm here to collect chaos emeralds.
All right, moving on to the next question, which we're passing back to Unironic and Cap. All right, so we're assuming libertarianism elevates the individual and racism groups people into different groups. So which is more important for libertarianism, the individual or the group?
The individual.
Is that your full response?
Yeah.
Okay. Passing it over to Jeremy to respond and answer the question.
The individual, of course, which means, hey, we shouldn't be racist.
All right. Easy question there. Let's move on to the closing statements then. Since Jeremy went first for the openings, or actually, sorry, Unironic and Cap went first for the opening statements, we'll have Jeremy go first for the closing statements.
I think we've definitely demonstrated that he wasn't prepared for a debate. But beyond that, the idea that being fine is somehow analogous to being libertarian is demonstrably false. And the idea that because somebody could allegedly exist in a libertarian paradigm, they're libertarian is also false. A wide variety of people could exist in these societies. Hell, a statist uprising could happen where they decide to establish a government. That's exactly something that many people bring up when they're arguing against anarchists in general, is the idea that, well, if you get anarchy, there might just be another government. And yeah, there might be. So if that is going to be there, these people, like, they will exist. There will be people who want to go back to the old ways. And there will be people who are overwhelmed by the libertarian revolution, who feel like they got left behind. Those people are not going to take kindly to it. And a variety of those people are going to be racists. You know, the kind of racist that lives on government assistance so that they can continue spamming 4chan with a bunch of bullshit. That kind of racist. What I'm talking about here is the fundamental core of libertarianism. And the idea that you keep on saying it's not that deep means that you haven't looked that deep into libertarianism. And neither have anybody else who've made this argument, to be honest, because ultimately this argument is made from ignorance. The whole point of libertarianism is to enrich the individual and to make sure that they can live the fullest life based on their individualist humanity. It's not to group people together based on race and then say, rah, rah, I'm on team pale skin. The whole idea of racism is antithetical to liberty. It spits in the face of libertarian thinkers to insist otherwise. And ultimately, I even had a bunch of names written down, but it looks like I won't need to mention them all. So I'll just mention Thomas Paine, abolitionist, Rose Wilder Lane, civil rights advocate, Albert J. Nock, Konkin, even Rothbard himself made some anti-racist arguments, because when you're pro-individualist, you can't be racist. When you're pro-liberty, you can't believe in paradigms that contradict it. We're talking very strong arguments here in my favor, and nearly no argument in his favor. The real question is, do you want to be fine by unironic ANCAP, or do you want to be libertarian?
All right, thank you for that. Unironic ANCAP, whenever you're ready, your closing statement, 5 minutes.
All right, my closing statement's been my same argument the entire time. Again, as long as you are well within, the ideas of the non-aggression principle, you aren't using the force or coercion to push your ideas. I believe that you are well within the ideas of libertarianism. A hypothetical situation would be some old dude in the woods that just doesn't like dark-skinned people and just kind of minds his own business, does business with who he wants to, and doesn't do business with who he doesn't want to. He's not using force. He's living out his life as an individual. He's not asking for people he dislikes to have any less rights than he does. They can live their life. He can live his life. They have the right to associate with who they please. That's it. It's that simple of an argument. That's my closing statement right there for you.
All right. Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Ballot, on Iraq ANCAP and Jeremy Harding. I appreciate it. For everybody listening, go to the comments. Let us know. Who do you think won the debate? Which idea, more importantly, do you think won this debate? Let us know in the comments and anywhere else you find this, and maybe we'll have a follow-up of some sort. Thank you guys for coming on, and I'll see you all next time. Beyond the Ballot is sponsored by Project Sparta. Go to projectspartacoaching.com now to learn more and get on your path to health.
professional anarchists.
You guys are getting paid?